Today we're going to take a look at how to get a great sound out of every note that you play on the guitar in 3 simple steps. Before we get into it, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video around to anybody you think this could help. So let's switch over to the guitar view and jump into it. So the 3 steps that we need to address. Step 1 is going to be addressing what part of the fingers we're actually going to be using to play the guitar. So for this, what we want to do is primarily play on the tips of our fingers. So the tips of our fingers are these ones here. We don't really want to be playing with any of these kind of sections of our fingers, none of these kind of pad, fleshy parts. We really want to be right on the tips. Now, the reason for this, and the way that I always demo this, is I pretend that, say, the pick here is the string. So it's a hard surface, and what you want to do is, if I kind of show you this here, the pick, and try this out yourself too. The pick, if you kind of push it against your finger, you'll notice that it kind of absorbs into this kind of fleshy pad part of your finger. But if you go on the tip, it doesn't quite go in as far. And the reason for this is that we have bones going through our fingers all the way up, straight up to the tips. So what we want to do is to try and get the notes as clear as possible on the guitar. We want to be pressing right on the tips of our fingers, so we get this hard surface against hard surface contact. If you were to use the pads, you're going to end up having to push a lot harder to try and get the notes nice and clear. So try your best to be right on the tips of your fingers. So you can try this by just kind of like laying your fingers across each of the frets on a string like this. Really getting them on the tips, and you should have these kind of really nice rounded fingers. We don't want anything like this where the fingers are kind of flat or the joints are kind of bending the opposite direction like this. They should be nice and rounded like this. Cool, so that's step number 1. Step number 2 has to do with where inside of this kind of like fret space that we're actually going to be playing. So you can experiment with this yourself. Some people might think, okay, let's put the fingers right in the middle in between the frets. Some people might try back here a little bit more. But with a little trial and error, you'll notice that it requires the least amount of effort if we play right behind the fret. So I want you to try this. I want you to try going to, for example, the first fret on the first string, the high E string, and see if you can just play that note. So again, on the tips of our fingers, see if we can just play that note right behind the fret. If you try with the same amount of effort, you try playing as far away from the fret as possible, really close to the nut here, you'll notice that it's probably going to have this kind of buzzy, twangy sound, which isn't really something we're looking for. So right behind the fret is what we're looking to do. So that's step number 2. So again, step number 1, tips of your fingers. Step 2, right behind the fret. And if you're doing both of those things and you go to play the note and it sounds like this, it sounds kind of like dead or muted. What we want to do is introduce step number 3, which is a little bit of pressure. So that's going to be a matter of pushing down on the string just a little bit. Now, the method for doing this took me a long time to figure out. The method is actually not going to be this kind of like gripping motion. You're not going to be kind of grabbing the neck with like your thumb muscles. You're not going to be like using these muscles in here to kind of like grab the guitar. What you're instead going to try to do is use the weight of your arm and a little bit of like weight from gravity to kind of press into the string. So we don't really want to be gripping too tightly with our hand. We want a little bit more of this kind of like almost like a pulling motion, or letting gravity kind of let our fingers go into the strings. And this applies to all forms of guitar. If you're playing classical guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, doesn't really matter. It should apply to all of them. So we want to use that as much as possible because the guitar is a tricky instrument. We're going to cut corners as much as we can. Okay? So here's what we're going to do is we're going to place our finger right behind the fret, right on the tips of our fingers, and we're going to play that note. And here's the exercise I want you to do to really dial in the amount of pressure that you're going to use here. So what you're going to do is just start by tips of your fingers right behind that fret on the first fret of the first string, and I want you to continuously, with your right hand, pluck that string. And you notice right now it's dead sounding. This is actually what I want to start. And what we're going to do is slowly add more and more pressure in our left hand. We should get this kind of like buzz note first, and then if you press just a little bit more, it should clear up. And you might notice that that doesn't actually require as much effort as you might think. Majority of guitar players, myself included, are almost always using too much pressure when we play the guitar. So this is a really good exercise to kind of dial in how much pressure you really need to get a great sound out of every note. And you can do this in different places on the guitar. I usually pick the first fret on the first string as the best place to start because it usually requires the most amount of effort. So if you can press that one, you can probably press pretty much anywhere with that amount of effort. Okay, so I'd like you to try that out. Let me know how it goes. And that's pretty much it. So in summary, the 3 steps one more time. Tips of your fingers, that's number 1. Number 2, what was it? Right behind the fret. And number 3 is applying a little bit of pressure. A lot of times people will skip out on number 1 or 2 and they'll jump straight to pressing as hard as possible, thinking that that's the best way to get the good results, but always go through it in that order as well. Cool. Hope that helps you guys out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.